The Nintendo ToS change is wild. Can you link me? Oh, is that the one where people are talking about they can remotely brick your Switch if you break their ToS? Yeah. I'd be interested in how that compares to Steam. I would be interested in seeing how that compares to Steam and their policy on that. I'd also be interested to see if that policy is different for, say, the 3DS and the DS and the Nintendo Switch 1. I don't know what that policy, how different that policy is. Hey, they can take your games from you or just down support for them? That's not about that. It's about the device itself. I'm interested to know if Nintendo can do that to the DS and the 3DS to see if they had that, if the ToS has even changed or if it's always been this way. Bringing this new Nintendo clause could make your Switch 2 unusable. Okay, nice fearmonger. Nintendo updated its user agreement with privacy policy ahead of the Switch 2 launch next month, and while the company briefly listed a few of this, I want to see the actual policy change. In comparison, via Eurogamer. Okay, so now we have to go down the rabbit hole to the actual source article. Nintendo reserves right to brick your console following unauthorized use in bid to prevent piracy. This is a better headline. See, this is why I hate this shit. Breaking this new Nintendo clause could make your Switch 2 unusable. Oh shit, Nintendo's gonna come after me. No. Nintendo reserves the right to brick your console following unauthorized use in a bid to prevent piracy. Yes, real, accurate information. Nintendo has confirmed it will only review video and audio recording as part of its user report system. All recording is otherwise privately stored on device, and no recording is sent to Nintendo until a report is submitted. Nintendo has updated its Nintendo agreement with a severe warning against unauthorized use in a bid to prevent emulation and piracy. That's very odd. How would they know that you were doing that if they didn't get a recording of your actions? And if they can't get a recording of your actions unless you send in a request, you just wouldn't ever send in a request. That's a bit weird. I want to know more. The agreement for UK accounts now states digital products are licensed only for personal and non-commercial use, and that any unauthorized use of digital product may result in the digital product becoming unusable. So, quote, licensed only for personal and non-commercial use. No streamer will be able to stream the games, based on that wording. When we are streaming a video game, that is a commercial use of the game. I would be really interested in a lawyer's take on this. How does that work now? Switch is physical too, though, and this is physical too, and it's got Bowtie in it right now. Some people stream directly from hardware. I would be interested. I would like to get a lawyer's take on that. I want to know more. Please full screen and zoom the article. This differs slightly from US, which states, you acknowledge that if you fail to comply with the foregoing restrictions, Nintendo may render the Nintendo account services and or the applicable Nintendo device permanently unusable in whole or in part. Here's the original wording effective since April 2021. You are not allowed to lease, rent, sublicense, publish, copy, modify, adapt, translate, reverse engineer, decompile, or disassemble all or any portion of Nintendo account services without Nintendo's written consent or unless otherwise expressly permitted by applicable law. The way that this worked historically is you can't go and distribute, say, Mario 64 modded version. But what you can distribute is a ROM hack that somebody else can apply to their own version of Mario 64, if that makes sense. So they're doing it with their own copy that they own. I'd be interested in how this applies to the modding community. I'd also be interested in how this applies to streamers in this case, because it's licensed only for personal and non-commercial use, which streaming is generally seen as commercial use. I don't know how that lands legally, right? I don't know what that does. Yeah, Nintendo does hate the modding community. They do. I could see that. Yeah, this is also got to get challenged in court to really figure it out. It's nonsense until it holds up. Yes. Yeah, this is weird, man. Without limitation, you agree that you may not A, publish, copy, modify, reverse engineer, lease, rent, decompile, disassemble, distribute. This is normal. Create derivative works of for any portion of Nintendo account services. That's normal. This is not weird. Bypass, modify, decrypt, defeat, tamper with, or otherwise circumvent any of the functions or protections of the Nintendo account services. That's normal. Including through the use of any hardware or software that would cause Nintendo services to operate other than within accordance with documentation intended use. Obtain, install, or use any unauthorized copies of Nintendo account services or exploit Nintendo account services in any other manner to use them in accordance with the applicable documentation. This is all normal. This part is all normal. The part that it gets weird is if you fail to comply with the foregoing restrictions, Nintendo may render the Nintendo account services and the other applicable device permanently unusable in whole or in part. Which means the only thing I can think of is that they put landmines effectively inside of the device, where if you're trying to decompile it or reverse engineer it or it detects that you're trying to do these things, it will phone home. But the way that people handle that is they just set up a device locally and then they stop it from phoning home, unless they've built that directly into the firmware. I know people are going to try and find a way to fight this. They're going to find a way to circumvent all of the things that Nintendo has done. But I do think that's really interesting. Poison update nuking firmware effectively. I'd also be interested in how they will disable the device. Is that like a firmware thing? It's very invasive. Not necessarily. Like, you can just check to see if you're, I'll give you an example. Programs can check to see if they're running in a VM, for instance. You can check to see if they've connected something that is like a decompiler. There's all kinds of stuff like this. But I'd be interested to see how this works. Via account services probably. Could be. But it may be built into the firmware on the device. Don't know. I'd be interested to know more information about how they've implemented this, which I'm sure the general public will find out how it's actually implemented within the first month, legitimately. No, there's no small C4 charge in it. Ridiculous. Yeah, what they're really doing is they're making a treasure map with an X on it. Yeah, that's exactly what they're doing. For some people, they're doing that. So I'm interested in seeing how this plays out, because like legally, that's kind of unprecedented. I've never seen that before, where they're like, we reserve the right to brick the device. But how do they brick the device? Can I just flash the firmware on it? Right? Because like, if they made it so that they just send like a poisoned firmware update and it doesn't actually do any physical damage to it, people are just going to flash it. Yeah, like they'll find a way to do that. You're paying a subscription to hardware? No, you're not paying a subscription to hardware because you're not paying money every month to the hardware. Like, this is saying that you buy a device, and if you try to reverse engineer it, they will turn it off. Will it still brick if I crack it offline? That's what I'm wondering, too. That's why I'm wondering if it's built into the firmware. Because, like, if it's connected to the internet, they could do it that way through the account service system. But if they're not, I bet it's calling home nonstop. What if it's not connected to the internet? Not every device is at all times. How does that work? They watch you through the camera? Doubt. Large doubt. That would be a problem. That'd be infinitely problematic. Like, immediately the EU would descend like a vulture and eat them alive. Poisoning software, I believe, is already legal. It's not poisoning software, though. It's disabling a hardware device. I want to know, man. I want to know how this plays out. I've never seen a company willfully shoot itself in the foot this hard. Is buying the Switch agreeing to that? Effectively, yeah. Yeah, when you buy the device, you are agreeing to the document. I don't understand this. You know what? You're right. You're right, Matt is not a sheep. I watched Sony do it. Sony Publishing did this before this. You remember when you could just, buy games on Steam, which you can still do? Remember that? Steam and GOG are gutted. Yeah, I'm waiting. Like, if right to repair is law here in Washington, let me check that. I want to fact check you for a minute. Right to repair, Washington State. Washington State Senate approved the right to repair for consumer electronics and appliances, HB 1483, by a strong bipartisan vote of 48-1 on April 10th. Oh, that was new. Well, that's cool. When did this happen? April 10th. This year? Yeah. No, this year. That's kind of cool. All right. I need to look into that more. So if that's a thing here in Washington, how does that... the law overcomes a ToS. What happens if Nintendo bricks my device in Washington State? I could sue based on my state's laws. Now that gets interesting, right? Now that gets interesting, and I'd have the backing of the state. So, like, I'm kind of interested in seeing how this goes, right? Because the law always trumps a ToS from a company. So what happens there? New ToS says you can't sue Nintendo, though, from what I've seen. The law trumps a ToS. Just because a company says, hey, dude, you're not allowed to sue me, doesn't mean shit. If the state wants to go after you, the state is going after you. And if you break the law, your ToS is worthless. So if the law is that I should be able to have the right to repair and modify, then I should be able to repair and modify. So what I'll probably do is, knowing all the kind of little bit more of the components that are involved with this, I'm going to go watch some like legal YouTubers and like maybe reach out to some people and find out stuff. Yeah. The law doesn't trump Miyamoto hitting your knees with a bat. That's funny. The mouse is going to show up at your house, dude. Disney's on his way right now. Mr. Disney, John Disney himself, is coming to kick your ass because you made a video of Mickey Mouse. Yeah, no, I'm really interested. I'm really interested in seeing how that holds up. And since our state has a law for right to repair, does that conflict with this? It seems like it would. I want a legal person to talk about it. I'm going to ask some people some stuff. I want to know more information. That's interesting. That's a conundrum. And I think that's the thing is you're probably going to get a lot of stuff that's like doom and gloom, sky is falling. But it's like, can they really do that? I don't know. Link to the page for Eurogamer? Yeah. Got a last legal eagle? I'd be interested in his take. I'd be interested in a lot of different lawyers' takes, though. Not just one. Because that's the idea is, if we have right to repair in Washington, what happens if Nintendo bricks my device and I am no longer able to repair it because Nintendo intentionally bricked the device? Does Washington State now have a problem with that? And this is new law, too. New. So that's a pretty interesting scenario. Yeah. Lawsuits will go nutty in Washington State. Yeah, I'm very interested in that. Repairing differs from modifying? It might. That's what I'm interested in. Because here's the thing. Let's say you modify it. Let's say you modify the device. Modifying could include physical repair. That ends up being a problem. Right to repair means that I should be able to go to any company to have it repaired. If I go to a third-party repair option and they brick my device because it's been modified or tampered with, now it ends up being really interesting right? It's just super weird. It's just a weird change, and it's unnecessary. We haven't seen Steam do that with the Steam Deck. Why are you doing that? Are you so worried about the small amount of emulation that happens that you have to stop everyone from doing it? Amazingly, that allows people to want to play your games more. Just like, oh, I don't know, all of the Smash Bros. Tournaments that were going on before you stomped on those too. What if something goes wrong? Can they reverse the bricking of the device? What if it gets a false positive, right? What happens when someone figures out a way to make your device false positive remotely and they brick everyone's device that's connected to the internet? I don't know. What do you think about Skype? I don't think about Skype at all. Soon nobody else will either. It's going away.